Hey, KU fans, welcome back to KU Sports Extra here at KUsports.com with Benton Smith and Shane Jackson. I'm Matt Tate, and if you have not noticed, we are talking Lance Leipold all day, every day, all the time, for the rest of time.
Yep. Have you visited our site, lanceleipold.com? We have so much Lance Leipold content.
I like it. We should look into
KUsports.com
that.
right now. Yeah.
We should look into, buying that URL and just seeing and if we can at least redirect. Maybe we can work out a little side hustle with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Or at least sell it to him. I'm sure he's got more money now. So
Yeah.
How are you
That's
sure?
true.
How are you sure?
Shane read that PDF. He saw those dollar bills.
did not. No.
Terrific job move by him. Career move. Goes from 624,000 at Buffalo to 2.2 and climbing here at Kansas. I mean,
Yeah. Significant incentives to come here. And not that, I mean, I feel like he is the type of guy that's such a football lifer to, just the idea of being a Big 12 head coach and getting that chance to kind of prove yourself at this level was enticing enough, but also huge pay raise.
huge, 4 times, right? Almost 4 times your salary.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
And look, I mean, like, I'll be honest with you. I thought that I thought it would be higher than $1 million, but lower than 2. I thought that's kind of what they were going to pay whoever they hired. And, they went a little higher. And I think that part of the reason probably for that is as much as this is a Big 12 job and a Power 5 job and all that, it comes with a lot of risk for the man taking the office, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so I think you do have to incentivize it. You have to say, look, we're going to make it worth your while because we know this is a hard job. And, does that mean they couldn't have got him or someone for 1.8, 1.5? I mean, I don't know. That's the number they settled on there. So I would imagine that's what it took to get him. But I don't have any issue with the amount. I'm sure you guys don't either. I mean, it's you want a good coach, you got to pay somebody to be a good coach, and you've got to pay them to be willing to take this chance with their career because it has not worked out for other people who have come through here, obviously.
And also, he could have pretty easily just gone and had another winning season at Buffalo and then found a different Power 5 job in November or December that, paid him at least this much. So, I mean, there were reasons that KU paid him that amount, and they obviously didn't want to have to, go out into this with like some lowball offer that nobody would want, right? I mean, that's kind of what got them into trouble with hiring David Beatty, was that they were so limited in that process with what they were going to spend budget-wise with that hire. That, I mean, obviously that was one of the many issues that have kind of plagued this program over the past decade.
Yeah, I think that's it, right? Like, I mean, we've written and people have talked and we've talked about why this is a good fit and why this one could actually have the feeling that it might work out. And, it's not just one thing, though, right? It's all those things. It's like, well, they're actually paying a guy. That's progress. That's a step in the right direction from the KU side of things. And oh my gosh, this guy's actually an adult, a football coach, a guy who's willing to, sit in there and grind and stick to his word and do the job. Well, that's a step in the right direction. I mean, there's just so many things that you start making that list and it's like, well, hey, this one does seem like it could work out. It doesn't mean it's going to. There's a lot of work that has to be done for it to be qualified as something that works out. But at least on the front end of things, at the outset here, at least it seems like there's a lot of people nationally, locally, whatever, that are saying, boy, that's a good hire. That could work out. So we've talked a ton about that. We've written about that. We've talked about it last Friday when the official word of him being hired was put out there. But since then, we've obviously had a chance to meet him too. And Shane didn't get over there. Unfortunately, he had some other pressing matters and was handling some things for us online. But Benton and I were at the press conference on Monday, and I want to start there today. Benton, your first impressions of the man, the coach, his vibe, his aura. I know, we briefly got to kind of break out with him a little bit too and talk to him, but just the whole thing. What'd you make of the man that's now in charge of Kansas football sitting before your eyes up there?
Yeah, I mean, I think what stood out most is just kind of his no nonsense approach, and I think that's we kind of knew what we were walking into with his introductory press conference. He's not a guy who's gonna, try to entertain you. He's just gonna provide for you his thoughts on football and how he got here and what makes him a winning coach. And he doesn't. It's not in his personality to come entertain everybody or have us double over laughing. I mean, he's just about fixing this football program. So that's a great start.
Yeah, what'd you make of his joke? He opened with a joke. I mean, I don't know that many people picked it up, but he opened with a joke.
He was talking about his.
Yeah, go ahead.
What did he say? He said he'd watched a lot of the NFL draft this past weekend and was working on his walk up to the stage. He didn't want anybody clowning his approach, I guess. So he should have gone wild with it. He should have had like intro music and not like a Stone Cold Steve Austin type situation. Glass breaks, he comes just charging in there.
Maybe
shotgun and beers,
rappelling down a rope from the ceiling.
There you go. But no, I mean that he was very serious. I think cracked a couple of jokes, maybe one about Culver's and that whole situation being overblown, how much he loves Culver's, because I think that kind of picked up some steam. Shane, you listened to a number of podcasts or watched some video interviews with him, and Culver's somehow kept coming up, right?
Yeah, like 2 or 3 different podcasts. They would be like, "What do you miss most about Wisconsin?" And he was like, "Culver's." I was like, that seemed like the most random thing ever. Also, didn't even know Lawrence had a Culver's. That was the crazy part. I have lived in Lawrence for years, and I didn't know that.
Yeah,
good burger. You're missing out. It's a good burger.
Yeah.
It's not like the best you'll ever have, but it's solid. It'll deliver. And he did say we talked with him a little more about the Culver's thing in the breakout, and he did, like you said, Benton. He said, this is kind of getting to be too much. I think people are making too much of this. And I thought to myself, man, you just need to Google Bill Snyder and Taco Bell. And you want to see too much made of something. That whole Bill Snyder Taco Bell phenomenon was years long and way bigger than this. So, he's been compared by some people, right? His dry, sort of no-nonsense demeanor has been compared to Bill Snyder. So if people are still talking about Culver's 5-6 years from now in relation to Lance Leipold, that's going to be a good sign, and yet another connection to Bill Snyder. Any that you can find, if you're a head football coach, any that you can find that make people think of Bill Snyder when they're around you, do it. So go to Culver's every day, Lance. That's what I say.
Also, you could easily get Culver's like on the side of your headset or something like that, right? Kind of get a sponsorship deal going on top of just.
We should do that for LanceLeipold.com.
Sponsor. Trying to give him more money now.
Yeah. Well, I did. I mean, the joke, the joke about the walk up to the podium was funny. It was, it didn't make people double over in laughter or any kind of belly laughs or anything like that. But what I thought was funny about it was kind of like, it was almost like he was a guy that read a book about how to give a speech. And then like part 1, find a one-liner joke that you deliver early on. Part 2, get into them. It was just like, and I'm not saying he was uncomfortable by any means, but it just seemed like so formulaic, right? He was like, well, I better crack this early joke to kind of announce that I'm here, and then I'll get into the business of why I'm here. And I don't see anything wrong with that. If that's the approach he takes with rebuilding Kansas football, so be it. I think this has to be a very formulaic approach, and I think there are levels and variations within those steps, but I think that you do have to sort of look at this thing as a blueprint and say, well, we need to do A, and then we need to do B, and then we need to do C. And it has to be built that way. And I get the sense that he understands that, not only because of his past, but also because of what he's learned about Lawrence and KU and what needs to happen here. In talking to Mark Mangino and Glenn Mason and others, including Travis Goff, the man who hired him. I thought it was an incredibly thorough search. We've talked about that on here before, but I think the more you are around him and the more you start to get to talk to him, you get that sense. I don't think he's, there are going to be things about this job that he has no idea about. That's the nature of this job. It's harder than anyone knows. It's harder than anyone can tell you. You have to get in that office and feel it and find out how hard it is for yourself before you can fully understand it, I think. But I think he comes in here as close to understanding it as maybe anybody we've ever seen. So that feels like a good thing. What else stood out, Ben, about his personality or just how he delivered kind of his "Hello, Lawrence" speech?
I mean, I think it's just like you clearly are talking about a guy who lives and breathes football and cares about, helping players develop and cares about establishing a culture and, having having a football facility where, everybody is bought into what he's doing and everybody's on the same page. I feel like a lot of coaches will kind of say they want to do those things, but he seems to put even more emphasis on it than other coaches have that you listen to in a press conference or an introduction or that type of thing. So I think he's just like a guy who only cares about, building a football program. And he's obviously done that at a place that's not easy to do it at Buffalo the past 6 years. So that was probably one of my bigger takeaways is just like, this guy is here to do the job and there aren't any like frills about it. And that's probably exactly what you want if you're KU.
Yeah, he seems exactly like that. I mean, this is as much as it is new to him, and it will be new to him, it's not foreign, right? I mean, he's done this before, and I think you get the real sense that he believes he has a formula that works, and it is built on continuity, both with players and coaches and your staff, and how they approach things and how they treat things, and I mean, there have been reports out there that he's bringing 7 assistants with him. Do you have any other news, or have you heard much more about any of the staff stuff?
Nothing new. I mean, it does sound like that even though there are 7 Buffalo assistants coming, some of those guys might take on analyst roles or support staff roles. So it's not necessarily these are 7 new position coaches that are coming in.
Gotcha.
So that'll all be sorted out. It does, for sure. It looks like both his coordinators are going to be taking over, obviously. So, sure. And that's some interesting continuity. That's something he brought up he couldn't really say on Monday morning, hey, I'm bringing my offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. But he also, I'm sure, didn't mind that news kind of got out there later Monday, so that, people who maybe he's already, recruiting and that type of thing can kind of get a sense of what type of staff he's building here at KU.
Yeah, I love the continuity thing. I love that he extends it to his staff. I mean, I think that, what did he say? This is a place I want to be for a very, very long time. And I want to make sure I have a staff that feels the same way, that those guys want to be here. Of course, like any coach, he would love for some of his guys to maybe go get head coaching opportunities. There's not a coach on the planet that doesn't enjoy watching that happen. But I think, they have to take the right jobs if they come. And if they don't, I think he'd rather them stay here and make them happy and make sure their lives are good. And the more you do that, the better it is for your program. And at this point, that would be for Kansas football. So, Shane, you've looked into the coordinators a little bit, at least on one side of the ball. I don't know about both. I don't know how much of an overachiever you are, but some people out there do. So tell me what you know. I mean, this offensive coordinator, first, tell us how to pronounce his name. Can you do that? Let's start there.
I was hoping one of you had the answer for that. I'm pretty sure it's Kotelnicki. I don't know. I'm not actually sure. I'm pretty sure I butchered that. Andy. We'll call him Andy.
Coach Andy.
Yeah. And then I did also just write a blog on Borland like just today. But yeah, so on the offense side of the ball, yeah, I watched basically a coaching clinic. And I enjoy coaching clinics just in general. I think coaches tend to be more open about maybe what they're trying to do, in their scheme and all that stuff during that process. He wasn't actually as candid about that. I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot of scheme stuff talked about, but I think my biggest takeaway was just how organized he was and how much of a plan he has on that side of the ball. I mean, he had a yearly schedule, a weekly schedule leading up to every single game. And you could just tell, minutes equaled reps. That was something he said during the coaching clinic. And there was a plan all along. And I think that goes back into, what we were just talking about earlier, but, Leipold bringing his coordinators in that continuity. I mean, if they've all been together for, how many ever years it's been, I think now 8 years, all 3 of them have been together. That there's a clear plan if all 3 of them are there together and all these coaches are there together, and it's just not just for this year. You're building a staff for long term, as kind of Leipold said on Monday. So I think that's what I came away with is from the head man to the coordinators, like they're all on the same page. And maybe that hasn't always been the case, especially here at KU with kind of that revolving door, especially at the OC part. So on the defense side of the ball, Borland, he comes with kind of a 4-3 defense. And so that'll be the biggest change going from 3-4 to 4-3. But statistically, they've fared very well in the MAC, Buffalo has.
Yeah, first or second in defense the last 3 or 4 years, I think, right? Something like that.
Yeah, it was top 3 defense the last 3 years, I believe. So.
Oh, okay. There you go. So I wonder, too, like, I mean, and Leipold said this on Monday. I mean, when he was asked about scheme and what he might run here, I mean, didn't he say we want to be as multiple as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, that is what we'd heard, right? That was the whole thing. Shane, you wrote about his versatility maybe being a huge thing that helped get him hired.
Mm-hmm.
We had heard that and heard that and heard that and heard that. It was cool to hear it from him, right? Like, and what does multiple as possible mean? Well, that's to be determined. And I think that's something that even he doesn't know yet. But I think what it tells you, right, is that he is willing to look at anything and everything that might fit this personnel and might fit what they already have here. I thought it was a big statement that he made about we want to win with the players we have right here. I mean, you have to a certain extent. You can't go out and find 85 new guys, so that's not totally overwhelming or mind-blowing, but it speaks to commitment. It speaks to he's looked at this roster, he's looked at this personnel, and he says there's guys here that can play and that we can win with. I mean, just that, day one, early on, before you even know the guy or have been around him, the players hear that. There's confidence that comes from that, I think. So I thought it was cool to hear him say that about the offense, because I do think that, that part is a to be determined sort of thing. I mean, he's got to look at Jalen Daniels and Miles Kendrick and whatever other quarterbacks may or may not be there and decide, okay, well, if that's our guy, then this is maybe what we need to do or whatever it is, right? Like any coach would. And it sounds like that's where he's at. Do you agree with that, Benton? I mean, do you think he's still got a little bit of sort of an evaluation ahead of him, maybe for the next month or so, if not longer?
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of evaluation ahead of him because, he's obviously not walking into this job blindly, but there's no way he can know in depth what he needs to know about every single player. I mean, just on the 2 deep, let alone, guys that are, kind of rounding out the roster. So he's got a lot to learn. He's going to be watching a ton of video, over these next few weeks. And I mean, I guess that's what he would be doing regardless this time of year, along with recruiting and that type of thing. But I mean, he really has to go into preseason camp knowing as much as he can about these guys and knowing what he can expect, what's reasonable, and what everybody's strengths and weaknesses are. So it's definitely unique timing, like he talked a little bit about, and that's probably going to be one of the bigger challenges. Is just like having Leipold and the new assistants that are coming in, just to have them all familiarized with everybody that they're going to, actually be asking a lot of this fall, and what obviously they're going to be, underdogs most of the year, just like they have been for years on end now.
Yeah. What did he say about the unique thing? He said, it is unique, but we're going to find a way to make it positive.
He kind of talked about like, there's certainly guys on the roster who probably don't mind having a fresh set of eyes evaluating them,
Yeah.
Because if you've been in a program and you've had the same coaches, maybe an assistant coach kind of just like makes a decision early on, like, I don't know about this guy. We'll just leave him a little buried on the depth chart, and so maybe that's a motivating factor for some guys to kind of come and prove themselves to a new coaching staff. If they're not established players, maybe this is their chance to kind of break through and actually become someone who plays a valuable role on the team. So I think that's kind of the way he decided to spin it. And I think he just went out of his way to like focus on what positive things could come out of this timing.
Yeah, right. Because there's nothing you can do about it otherwise, right? I mean, you can't change the timing. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he met individually with the staff Sunday, and one-on-one, right? And then if I'm not mistaken, he was starting to meet with players right after his press conference Monday, one-on-one, I think, and that won't be the last time, obviously. But it was really interesting after the spring game. I asked Sam Burt about if there's enough time, right, between May 1st and September 1st. Is that enough time for a team with a new coach and presumably new schemes and all this stuff to put together some kind of product that they can go out there and feel confident in and feel good about competing with? And the thing that the easy answer that Sam Burt gave was, yeah, that's enough time. I think it is. But the reason behind it, which I thought was really cool, was he said, I've not ever seen a culture change as dramatic as the one we had this spring. And to me, that was credit to Emmett Jones. That was really credit to the entire staff, but it's also credit to the players. And I get the sense that these guys are, yeah, they wanted to know who their new coach was, but I don't feel like any of them, and we haven't talked to all of them, but you know, he's speaking on behalf of a lot of them. I don't get the sense that any of them are like, oh, this sucks. This sucks. I think it's exactly what you just said, Benton, a fresh set of eyes, a new start. We're all on the same starting block right now. And let's go and press this new guy and let's take him and bring him along the way he's going to bring us along. And I just thought that for Sam Burt, I mean, he's been around. This isn't just a guy who's only been here a couple years. He's seen a lot of Kansas football teams and a lot of different coaches and a lot of different ways of doing things. And for him to say that culture change or that culture vibe that he felt this spring was different than ever before and maybe better than ever before, that's a really good jumping off point. And I think that tells you exactly where this team is at. I mean, they are hungry to keep moving in the right direction. And maybe now they feel, even without knowing him, they feel like they have a guy who can help them do that. So it's got to mesh, you know, it's still got to work together, but at least from a mindset approach and from these guys, both sides, coaches and players, being open to that doesn't seem like it could be any better than it is. So I think if nothing else, that sounds like a really good endorsement for Emmett Jones. Have you heard anything that makes you think that he's not going to be around? I mean, it sure seems like he's going to be back, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think if there were, I think we would have been more likely to hear something by now if like he wasn't going to be kept around. I think Lance Leipold wants to keep him around, and I'm sure for Emmett, he's probably just kind of taking his time and making sure that this is going to be right for him too.
Sure.
So I get the sense that I would lean more that Emmett Jones will remain on staff, because obviously, as I think we've talked about this multiple times over the past couple of months, like that's the guy you want to keep. If you didn't keep anybody else, he's the one guy you would want to keep, just because of how important he's been for, you know, the culture this spring, as you just talked about, but how important he's been as a recruiter. And, you know, he's brought in some young wide receivers that they think very highly of long term. And I mean, but he also has brought in guys like Stephen Parker. And, you know, I mean, it's not like he's limited in what he's delivering for this program. And it seems like he likes it here and has enjoyed his time here. And so if KU can hold on to him, I mean, you got to do what you got to do to make that happen, I would think.
Agreed. Shane, what's the reality for this season? I mean, it's year 3 for this group, kind of, right? But it's new coaches now, and it's new system, and it's new everything. But a lot of these players have been together, and a lot of those young guys that have been playing the last couple of years do have a little bit of experience now. So that, you know, if nothing changed, those guys, you'd expect them to maybe make another leap, right, this year. And so can we still expect that, even though they have a bunch of new coaches, or does that kind of bring it back a little bit? I mean, what's your feel on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It feels tough to do when a coaching change is made kind of this late in the spring. I'm not exactly sure how familiar that or how common that actually is. Right. But this feels kind of late in the process, regardless maybe what players would indicate or suggest. But yeah, I mean, I think even Leipold with some of his answers maybe was probably, he knew that was obvious. Like, you know, the whole coaching staff not, you know, building one for just 2021, you know, when asked to define success, you know, saying for this year, he said, take it one day at a time and get better every single day type of thing. So I think even he knows that, you know, this is going to be a tough transition immediately. And the goal is not necessarily fall of 2021. And I don't think it would have been regardless of who was really at the helm. I think we all kind of knew that this team was going to struggle maybe this fall. And I think that will just be kind of enhanced a little bit with all the changes going on, you know, changing the offense, defense, stuff like that this late in the process. So as exciting this might be for some fans, you know, temper expectations, of course.
Yeah, Mike DeBoard brought in to be the offensive coordinator. Not going to be retained. I mean, as you mentioned, there's a new OC, Coach Andy, and I mean, even DeBoard went on and was on Twitter and said, well, I was brought to Kansas for 3 months for a reason, and it was to meet good people. I mean, so he's not hiding the fact that he's not going to be the offensive coordinator here, and so we don't really know how much of his offense was installed. At least I don't, and so you don't know how dramatic that is, right? I mean, this group just learned a new offense, and then now are they learning a completely new offense all over again, or did they kind of slow play DeBoard stuff and maybe it's not totally scrapping everything? I mean, I don't know if we know the answers to that. Do you have any insight on that, Benton? I mean, because there's nothing they can do about it, but that makes it harder for sure.
No, not yet. I'm sure some of that will start to come out the more we're able to talk to players and that type of thing. But I will say that they throughout the spring, players and Emmett Jones too went out of their way to not really tell us like what they were working on offensively or how it was different from what they ran last year when Brent Dearman was here. But I mean, if there were any changes, which there obviously were, you're going to expect that a new OC is going to come in here and want to make more changes. So it's not going to be just a smooth transition. Like, oh, here's what we worked on all spring, and this OC definitely loves all these plays that Mike DeBoard ran. Right. So we're just going to stick with them. It's going to be different. And I guess the good news for players is you got months to kind of familiarize yourself with that playbook, and even in the summer guys will get together and work on stuff by themselves, but that's going to be a crash course in August, it seems like.
A lot of it too is this is nothing new for those of us who have been around here covering this thing. I mean, I used to think this was a lot harder of an idea of a new offense. Well, it is, and there's a lot that goes into it, but a lot of it is terminology. Once you start seeing concepts and you see, formations and schemes, and you're like, oh, I recognize that. I just have to know now that it's called this, this, and this instead of this, this, and this. And so is that hard? Yeah, it's really hard because your brain has been drilled into remembering something else, but it's not as if they need to learn how to run a go route again. Right? Like, or how they have to do a zone blocking scheme. I mean, they know those things. These guys have been playing football a lot of their lives, and a lot of them in college for a long time. So not terribly difficult to relearn terminology. It's just reps at that point. You just have to really commit to that playbook, like Benton said, and dive in and really just force your brain to kind of think differently. And so hard for sure, but not impossible. And as Sam said, and as you just said, I think there is time. I mean, that's the beauty of what these guys can do. They can get a playbook in their hands, and they can spend all their free time between now and August doing that and reading it and learning it. And I get the sense that they'll be committed to it on that level. We got about 5 more minutes, so I thought we could just kind of end with, obviously final thoughts. I mean, whether it's about Monday or about the season ahead or about 5 years from now or about the contract, is anything that is also on your mind that's so important about this transition? Because again, I think most people believe Kansas got this one right. The proof will be in the pudding. He's got to go out and figure it out and put it together, a product that proves that. And you do that by winning, of course. But there's a lot of people that think that they're better set up for that than maybe ever before, or at least in the last 10, 12 years. Benton, final thought.
I think it's probably good for KU that Leipold's coming into this kind of like as a flexible head coach, right? Especially when it comes to offense and what he wants to do. Like, he has proven that he will adjust to the personnel and kind of play to your strengths, which, every coach ideally should be doing that. Some coaches say they do that. They don't actually do it. Right. I mean, he's proven at Buffalo the past few years that he will do that. They went from a passing team to a let's run the ball, maybe 40 times a game, depending on who we got lined up against us this week. And that's good because, he's going to be learning a lot about these players. And one of the first things he's going to find is, there's not a lot of, expectations for the passing game for 2021. I don't think, you don't have any quarterback really that's a surefire starter. You don't have any really like outstanding receivers coming back. I mean, you got Kwame Lassiter II, obviously, and he was solid last year, but I mean, compared to, other teams in the Big 12 and who they'd run out as their, number 1 or number 2 receiver, KU doesn't have that type of athlete right now. What they do have is running backs. And then there's going to be issue with like, has our O-line actually improved in this past off season to make us be able to be a running team? So I just think it's great that he's kind of like a guy who just wants to grind and loves football and is flexible, because he's going to need all those qualities this season in particular. So
well said. Shane, final thoughts?
Well, we've covered this so well that I don't have anything big to say, but I'll just end it with a couple of fun facts about the coordinators. Coach Andy, who I still don't know how to say his last name, I apologize for that. On the topic of playbooks, he doesn't actually believe in physical playbooks, so everything's on Huddle or whatever. He said that in his coaching clinic. And Coach Borland coached softball at Baker, which is like the coolest thing ever for a season back in the day. So those are the 2 fun facts I have discovered in the last 48 hours.
I like it. I like that because, you could have lined up some BS there and really said something profound, but you didn't. You just said, here's a couple of cool things. So I'm going to take the BS route and do it this way. So I did get a chance to talk with Leipold's wife at the press conference too, and just kind of asked her a little bit about he had said during his press conference that she knew from the start that Kansas was the place to be, and I thought that was pretty cool, and so I wanted to grab her and just find out what that meant and have her elaborate. She was great. It was all about them being Midwestern people, and she grew up in Omaha. Her parents are from Carrollton, Missouri. Lance obviously born in Wisconsin and spent a lot of time there. So the more I talked to her, the more I just got the feeling that these are just normal people. He makes a lot more money than a lot of people now, all of a sudden, and did before. But they're just normal, down to earth Midwest people who want to succeed and work hard and have fun doing it. And I think that's really cool. One of the most incredible things that she mentioned to me was that, her husband his best friends are still people that he hung out with in kindergarten and first grade. I mean, that's the type of guy he is, right? So if that at all translates to the way he builds programs or the way he treats his coaches or his players, I mean, I think that this could be a very, very good pairing for Kansas, because, just because he's buddies with his kindergarten buddies still, does that mean anything for football in the Big 12? Not necessarily. But I think if you start to think about what has been here or what has been missing, and then that's now your guy who's leading you into the future, I don't see how you can paint that as anything other than a positive thing about a guy who gets it. And so again, he's got to go out and prove it. He's got to go out and do things that people want to see, like win games and be competitive. And he's planning to do all that. I think he believes, because his past success, he believes it'll happen here. And so now we'll just have to sit back and wait and watch it and see. But I do think that the steps are there. And I think that because he's been through this before, I get the sense from people that even if in year 3 he's still only won 4 games or 5 games, as long as you're seeing that progress, I think people will be willing to give him time because of the type of person he is and because of what he's promising. He's not promising championships and dynasties and bowl success right away or anything like that. He's just promising to do it the way he knows how to do it. And that's looked pretty darn good elsewhere. So I think KU has a chance to benefit from that. We'll see what happens. It'll be fun. I think it'll be fun to cover it. It does feel like this guy knows what he's doing. So anything you want to say beyond that, Ben? You got 2:46. I'll let you finish it off before I wrap this thing up.
Tate, I was curious how many introductory press conferences you've been to for the football program over the past, because I mean, I don't know what you were doing when Mangino was hired, but I'm pretty sure you've been at every other one since then.
Every other one. I missed Mangino. I was working at Bonner Springs in the weeklies that we owned then. But yeah, every other one, counting Clint Bowen's moment of interim introductory press conference. And, that's the thing, right? Everybody's been throwing this out at us. Oh, we've heard this before. We've heard this before. Well, sure. On some level, every one of those guys that came in thought they were going to do a good job. So, yeah, you have heard it before. But you got to listen between the lines. You got to have a little bit of a different approach to it. And I think the best thing I can say about that, man, is that it's good that this guy feels different than the others, right? So maybe it's not right. Maybe we'll be wrong. But the fact that it feels different should be something KU fans are celebrating. And I think they are. And I think that's where we go from here. So, yeah, all of them, though. And they've all been entertaining and interesting in their own right. But this one was boring in a sense. And that's what KU should want and should be thrilled about. So that's all the time we have here on KU Sports Hour at KUsports.com. For Shane Jackson and Benton Smith, I'm Matt Tate. Thanks for checking out this episode. We'll talk to you guys again real soon.